Hello, this is my first video tutorial. It's actually the first of a two-part series. In the first part I'll be showing you how to design the Web 2.0 buttons using GIMP, and in the second part I'll be showing you how to code those buttons. For those of you who've never used GIMP, you can get it for free at gimp.org. As can be seen here. We'll get started. Click on File, New. I'm going to create a canvas that's 160 pixels wide by 100 pixels high. I'll just resize this layer, this window. Okay, and to begin with, we're going to create a new layer. Clicking the New Layers button in the Layers panel. I'm going to call the layer Outer Stroke. Keep it transparent in case we want to export to PNG format in order to preserve transparency. Okay. Now I'm going to select the Rectangle Select tool, rounded corners, and set the radius of the rounded corners to its maximum 100, and then draw onto the canvas. If I come to the toolbox, I can set the size of the selection more accurately. I'm going to set it to 150 pixels wide by 40 pixels high. Enter, and there we go. If I just move this to the edges, there we go. Now what I want to do is give this selection a stroke. It will act as a border for the button. So Edit, Stroke Selection. I'm going to set the width of the stroke to 2 pixels. Solid colour uses the foreground colour stroke. And you see, given the way that GIMP handles selections, we don't have a very smooth stroke along the selection. So what I have to do is Control Z, select to path. This converts the selection to a path. So now I can use Edit, Stroke Path. Again, 2 pixels, solid colour, we'll get a black stroke. And there you go, you see that's much smoother. Control Z to reselect the selection. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it Gradient Fill. Selecting the Gradient Fill tool, or Blend tool as it's called in GIMP. Gradient, onto foreground to background gradient. I'll do. And I want the gradient to run from black to a grey. So I'm going to select a darkish grey. I've chosen the grey given by 7D7E7D in HTML notation. Okay. And if I now click at the bottom of this selection, hold down the Control key, that makes the line snap to 15-degree orientations, and just drag to just outside the button. So you have a nice gradient. I'm pretty happy with that. You might find there's too much black or too much grey. You just want to play around until you get it about right. I think that looks okay. If I select the rectangle tool, click outside, there's our outcome. Now what we want to do is, I'll Control Z to reselect the selection. Move the gradient fill down beneath the outer stroke, deselect, and now you'll see that the button's border sits on top of the gradient fill. If I Control Z to reselect, or another way of doing this would be to select from path, I create a new layer above the gradient fill but beneath the outer stroke. Do that by clicking on Gradient Fill, New Layer. I'm going to call this Inner Glow, and select, shrink. I'm going to shrink this current selection by 1 pixel. Okay. Then Edit, it's a path, so I can stroke the path. And I'm going to stroke it 5 pixels, and I want to stroke it a lightish grey. So I choose CCC. in HTML notation, enter, OK, stroke, deselect, and there you can see we have an inner stroke on the button. Now this doesn't give the button much of a 3D effect, so what I find works is filters, making sure that the inner glow layer selected, filters, blur, Gaussian blur, leave everything set to its default, and there you can see the button looks a little more 3D now. If now I click colours, brightness, contrast, I decide I want to just make it a little less bright. Okay, and there's a basic button. What we want to do though is add some sort of light effect. So I select the rectangle select tool, rounded corners to 100, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle within the button. About halfway down the button, that looks okay to me. Create a new layer. I'm going to call this top reflection. Then edit, fill with foreground colour, which is the grey we've just used for the inner glow. Deselect. Does that look okay? Yeah. Control Z to deselect. Now what I want to do is right click the top reflection layer and add a layer mask. I'll make the mask white so that any black or shades of grey make this top reflection layer hidden. I'll show you what I mean. If I make sure the mask layer is selected, well, I'm going to deselect this actually, select the rectangle select, make the radius 0, and then select the entire graphic in this layer. Make sure that the mask is selected, the gradient tool, and I want to run from black to white. So I select the default foreground and background colours here. I'm going to drag from the bottom of this selection to the top, holding then the control key to snap to a line. There we go. If I deselect, that looks reasonable. Okay, so now what we want to do is create a shadow or a reflection at the bottom of the button. So I click on the gradient fill layer, right click, duplicate layer. This duplicates the layer above the gradient fill layer. I call it bottom reflection, and then move the layer up. Select move the active layer, and I'm going to move it down just below the button using the canvas as a guide. Select a different layer to see. That should be okay. Select the bottom reflection layer again, and just here you can reduce the opacity. I'm going to reduce it to about 50. And same as before, click on the bottom reflection layer, right click, duplicate layer. Sorry, I don't want to do that. Right click, add a layer mask, again white. Select the gradient tool. Want to run from black to white again. Starting about halfway up the bottom reflection image, holding down the control key. Going to about the edge of the layer. Let go. There we go.